Welcome to MMA Junkie's Rankings Report for Wednesday, June the 3rd. Rankings chair, gorgeous George Garcia is with me as always, so let's jump right into it. George, this past weekend, the biggest fight was definitely the UFC headline between Gilbert Burns and Tyron Woodley. Dorino picked up a pretty impressive decision win over a former champ, and that has some major implications in the welterweight division. Let's start with Gilbert Burns. I know you had kind of a tough time figuring out exactly where to slot him, but where does he end up?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the panel that we've created, with the editors and myself and just talking it through. We knew a big move had to be made from 12, which was where he was at going into the fight, all the way up to where? 5 or 3. It was a couple names or spots that were mentioned there. We agreed on 5. He'll go from 12 to 5, which is a really, really good jump. But look, the role he's been on 4 in a row and solid wins along the way against credible guys, not anybody like that's top 50 or top 40. I mean, Damian Maia and Woodley, back to back is really, really solid. So we're rewarding him to a move to 5. And just behind him, Tyron Woodley, who was former number 2, he'll go from 2 to 6 to reflect that head-to-head.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Gilbert Burns taking some big chances in the welterweight division, but it's paid off. You mentioned the slide there for Tyron Woodley right behind Gilbert Burns. Makes all the sense. He actually takes a little slide off the pound-for-pound list as well, but that means there's room for a new name. So what'd you end up doing at pound-for-pound?
It's funny because on social media, these two guys were chirping at each other, and it was Reyes that kind of started it. Woodley kind of checked them a little bit, and, I threw in my 2 cents because even though they like to talk about UFC rankings, they also complain about UFC rankings. Nobody complains about the USA Today Sports and MMA Junkie rankings. So I mentioned that Woodley was on a slide down because of the loss to Usman, but the guy defended his belt 4 times. So when he was up there, he was cemented. And so the fall came down slowly, but can't do anything about it now. Gilbert Burns won, and he was decisive, so Tyron Woodley will exit the pound-for-pound rankings. Dominic Reyes will step in from nowhere to honorable mention. And then in our honorable mentions, where we have 3 names, Paulo Costa will make the jump from honorable mention to number 15.
I like it. Clearly, the most important data point there was the fact that the junkie rankings are the best. I mean, no question about it. We know that. All right. Let's talk about the heavyweights. I mean, it wasn't necessarily the most beautiful fight in the history of the UFC heavyweight division, but Augusto Sakai is now 4-0 in the UFC. He's got an impressive career record. He got that decision win over Blagoy Ivanov. What do you do with these two guys? I know Blagoy was a little higher up the rankings to start with, so what do you do with these guys?
So with Sakai, the winner, he's now 15-1-1 overall, 4-0 in the UFC, and Blagoy Ivanov was a top 10 name that he took out. I couldn't believe I heard 30-27 the other way. I may have given Blagoy 1 round, but definitely not 3. But Sakai got his hand raised. I think that was the proper winner. So he's taking a good jump. He's going to sail past a few guys that have either experienced some losses or they're just not doing much. That would be Ryan Bader, for example, who won his title a year and a half ago, and still nothing's been done with it because of that no contest. So Sakai will go from honorable mention all the way to number 11. He'll sit right behind Jairzinho and Overeem, and I think that's a good little spot for him. Ivanov will settle in at 12, right behind Sakai to reflect that head-to-head.
Yeah, Augusto Sakai, like I said, not necessarily the most beautiful of victories, but he should have some big names left. Now, this was a prospects-based card, but you did have a former title challenger, Katlyn Chookagian, in the women's flyweight division. She looked absolutely phenomenal, but she's kind of in a tough spot, really. I mean, there's just not a lot of room for her to go anywhere up at the top already.
Yeah, but I'm glad you did use that adjective, phenomenal, because what she did, John, was even though she didn't perform well in the title fight, you always think, well, can that fighter rebuild themselves and work their way to another shot? Because let's face it, there's not many contenders yet. That division's still being formulated. But, man, she showed some really good wrestling against Antonina Shevchenko, a really, really tough flyweight. And so she impressed. But she has nowhere to go because there's still a head-to-head match against Jessica Ai that she lost. And, Jessica Ai, even as she took a loss to Shevchenko, she also came back with a win. So they're in similar spots. We'll keep them at 3 and 4, Chookagian being the number 4.
And then I mentioned prospects. One of them made an immediate impact in his debut in the flyweight division for the men. Tell us about Brandon Royval and what you decided to do there.
Man, I like that kid. He got 50 Gs. He got a finish over a tough customer in Tim Elliott, all on short notice. But the guy's really, really got some good stats. He's won 6 of 7. His only loss was to Casey Kenny, who's a stud, and he's doing well at bantamweight. But, these guys fought at flyweight. So Brandon Roybal steps in at honorable mention.
Listen, as we said, that was a prospects-based card. US2 250 this week is not. There are some real contenders on there. I think we're going to see some movement all up and down, especially in the bantamweight division. Very, very exciting fights there. We'll talk about it all next week on the Rankings Report.